As-salamu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dear brothers and sisters, how are you? We're going to have an interesting conversation today about money, about wealth. And they're not the same thing. About the difference between money and wealth, and what we strive to be and do in the context of money and wealth. You know, if I ask any brother, do you want to be like the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him? Do you strive to be like the Prophet Muhammad? The average Muslim would answer, yes, of course. You know, of course, that is the goal of every Muslim, right? Or in general, you want to be like the prophets. You want to be like the prophets. We look to the prophets as an example of the type of men we would like to become, right? And likewise, if you ask any sister, would you like to marry a prophet? Would you like to marry the Prophet Muhammad? Peace and blessings be upon them all. You know, the answer is, what kind of question is that? If I had the opportunity to marry our prophet, to be the wife of our prophet, I wouldn't hesitate. To be the wife of a man of this character, this depth, this conviction, this focus. Right? Okay, now fast forward to 2020. You know, one of the reasons, one of the biggest reasons, excuses I hear for Muslims not getting married is money. You know, brothers talking about, I just don't have enough money to get married. Right? Or sisters saying, well, that brother, he's not making enough money to sustain me. He doesn't have enough money to take care of me. Same thing happened last week. SubhanAllah. I don't know why I don't know how to turn this thing off. Hold on. Okay. All right, so where was I? Right. So fast forward to 2022. We in 2022 already. You know? And what does everybody strive to be? It's not even now. I mean, look back historically. Like, everybody is chasing money. Everybody is chasing big jobs, big money. You know, your whole entire kind of existence is geared around wealth and generation of wealth and acquisition of possessions, and possessions that delineate and personify wealth. You know, want to have the best this, the best that, the best this, the best that, you know. But is that how our prophet lived? Is this what he strove for? Is this what he lived for? Is this how he died? Trying to acquire the best in life? Right? You know, I'm not going to really go through detail, but our prophet died poor, and most of the prophets were not wealthy by any stretch of the imagination. You know, you can count the wealthy prophets on one hand. You know, King Solomon, there was David, Abraham, peace and blessings be upon them. Jesus was not wealthy. Most of our prophets were not wealthy men. And in that context, there's lots, the height of Prophet Muhammad's wealth was really when he married Aisha, radiallahu anha. May Allah be pleased with her. And even that wasn't his wealth, right? I mean, he was first a shepherd, then he was a merchant. But the reason why Aisha married him was because of his character, right? It wasn't because she had more money than him. She had more wealth than him. She had inherited more wealth, and she had a business, and so she had the money. So think about this from her perspective. She married into poverty. She married into a man who could not provide for her the lifestyle that she had. How about that? And when he died, when the Prophet Muhammad died, he left nothing. He left, I think, it was like a bowl and a donkey that he used to ride. And he would sleep on the floor, and he would sleep on a mat like a bamboo or a straw mat that left marks. It was so hard that when you woke up, you had marks. He had marks on him. There were stories about his daughter not having enough oil to light a lamp for 3 days. And she had to go to neighbors just to get oil to light. Like, a prophet lived a poor life. And the height of, even at the height of the wealth of the ummah that was generated through the spoils of war and battle, this went to the ummah. He didn't retain this as his personal wealth. I think there was one time there was a battle where he got some land as a result of the battle, and this was the primary means that he used to feed his family. But our prophet died poor, and the wealth that he had, he gave it away. So what is this? What is this chasing after money that we do, that becomes the standard? If you look at this idea of what it means to be a high value man, right? That's coming from the West. One of these criteria is wealth. You have to make a certain amount of income to be considered a high value man. And so many of our Muslim brothers are taking this, excuse me, Assalamu alaikum, are taking this standard on, that you have to be, somehow it's a default that you've got to be wealthy. You have to amass wealth. You have to pursue wealth. Where does this come from? It doesn't come from Islam. It doesn't come from our tradition. It doesn't even come from the example of the Prophet that we all say that we strive to become like. And so if we strive to become like our Prophet or any of the great prophets, you don't pursue wealth. Wealth is not a goal. What is a goal is to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to be wealthy in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if He chooses to bless you with wealth, then He chooses to bless you with wealth. But that is not something that you put as a goal, as someone who's practicing to strive to become wealthy. This is not in our deen. It is not something that you wake up and you use to motivate you in the things that you do. I want to be rich. I want to be famous. These are worldly goals. These are worldly goals. And being, wealthy is a test in and of itself. What you strive for is deen. And so when you're looking to get married, again, I'll go back to the example of the Prophet Moses, because I know this is a story that most of you will know. He didn't wait till he got money or wealth or had property or home or any of this before he got married. He didn't have any of this when he got married. Right? I mean, he grew up wealthy, and then the minute that he took the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he was into poverty. And as far as I know, from the minute that he took this path until his death, he was not a rich man. I mean, walking in the desert, hello? This was not this from all practical accounts, this was a poor man. Okay, so in terms of, looking at a brother, for the sisters, looking at a brother and saying, he doesn't have enough money to provide, or he doesn't have a job to provide. This is not the criteria. Yes, we are the providers and the maintainers and the caretakers of women. Okay, but that doesn't mean that we cannot build together. That doesn't mean, think about it. Like, look at, okay, is a man who has a job, okay, a good solid job and good solid income and a good solid house, is that man better than the Prophet Moses, than the Prophet Muhammad, than the Prophet Jesus? Simple question. And if you had the choice to marry either of these men, which one would you marry? I mean, think about it. The answer is obvious but not obvious. I mean, most sisters will say, "Oh yeah, I would choose to marry the Prophet." Well then, what is this criteria that you have about the man has to have, a job and money and apartment and money in the bank and what is this criteria? If you would choose to marry one of the prophets, if given the opportunity, and choose to marry the seal of the prophets, then where do you get this criteria of he has to have all of this material wealth before you marry him? You understand? And this is serious because it's very, very widespread, and the sisters who are looking for spouses and men themselves deciding that they're not going to get married because they have, and parents, setting this criteria for wealth, for material wealth, has to have a steady job, has to have and putting that. Now, there's nothing wrong. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with looking for a brother who has wealth. But the problem is you're putting that criteria, brothers, you're putting that criteria above the development of your deen. When you are strong in your deen, you're ready for marriage. It's not you have to have a certain amount of income. And this is stopping the vast majority of Muslims that I speak with. This is really the crux of what's stopping them from making nikah. Parents, and especially parents, if they meet a good brother, but the brother doesn't have a strong career or a steady job, or is not living on his own and paying for an apartment on his own, then sorry, he can't take care of you, as if this is a prerequisite to getting married, as if you can't marry, the Prophet Moses when he was on the run from the law, wanted, illegal, criminal, had no possessions, didn't even have a name because his name was the name of the Pharaoh, and this wasn't even his, the dude had nothing. He had absolutely nothing. But he was destined for greatness in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so if you keep putting these criteria, brothers, if you keep putting this criteria for wealth upon you and even accepting it, from sisters who come to you and say, well, listen, I would like to marry you, but you don't have enough money, or you need to make more money before we get married. This should not really be the conversation that we have, as Muslims between each other in terms of deciding who is going to get married and when. There was a hadith that said that the poor will enter paradise 500 years before the rich. Okay. There's also another hadith where the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said that I looked into Jannah and saw that most of its dwellers are poor. It doesn't mean that you it doesn't mean that you strive to be poor, but in a way it does. If you look at the example of our Prophet, he died poor because he gave everything that he had away. I remember there's this one narrative about his dying, and when he was dying, he was kind of going in and out of sleep or consciousness, and he would sleep or pass out, and then he would suddenly wake up, and in the middle of waking up, he would ask Aisha, Allah be pleased with her, do we have any money? And she said, well, we've got a few dinar, and I was holding on to it just in case something happened. He was like, get rid of it, give it away, and then he passed out. I'm talking to you, but I'm also talking to myself. I mean, either we strive to be like the Prophet, or we don't. Okay, so I just wanted to bring that up, and it's something to really, sisters, it's something to really, really, really consider. To not put this, wealth barrier between you and your potential spouse. Any parents who are listening, to not have this wealth criteria. And I have a daughter, and she will be getting married, inshaAllah, and I will be in the position, so I'm not talking about anything that I don't know, that I haven't already internalized. If the brother doesn't have enough money to take care of your daughter, but he's got strong deen, and inclusive in having strong deen is the understanding that as the man, you are the provider and the caretaker of the woman, is accepting that responsibility, is having discipline, being able to work hard, to provide for your family. It's accepting that responsibility. That's part of being on deen. So there's no there's no scenario in which you find a brother who's on his deen and somehow, your daughter is going to be left. He'll work because he understands that this is a central part of what he has to do to take care of his family. Now, as to whether that work will result in wealth, that's up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's many hardworking people who are poor. There's many people who are lazy who are wealthy. Right? So, brothers, as you go forward, don't strive for wealth as your central and preeminent motivator. Live a life and do work that is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and just pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will choose to give you wealth if this is what you want. But again, wealth has its own problems. And in my work as a recruiter, I have spent most of my career counseling really wealthy men, primarily a lot of CEOs of companies. By all practical standards, these are very wealthy men. But I don't notice that these men are any happier than the average man that I meet. And they've got lots of issues that stem from their wealth. It's amazing because, once you get this money, then you somehow think, and even when you're poor, you also think that somehow money will solve all the problems. And so when you get the money, you try to use the money to solve the problems. And the money doesn't solve the problems. Like I know, man, like there was this one brother I was counseling, CEO of a big company, making 300,000, roughly $350,000 US a year, but had been divorced twice. Another brother, had lots of money, traveling everywhere, but strained relationships with his kids, and he was going towards the end of his career, and he had no relationships with his kids. He paid for them to go to private schools, and he was out jet setting all over the world and making big decisions, a big company, and getting the big money. And meanwhile his wife was lonely. Like she had a nice house and a nice car and rich friends, and could go out to lunch anywhere, but no relationship with his wife. And because he was apart from his wife for so often, because he was traveling for so often, then he was also lonely. So he went off to the side and did his business. Like, don't chase wealth, Don't chase wealth, and don't use wealth as a criteria to measure whether or not you're worthy of getting married or a brother is worthy to be a husband. The Quran says it so clearly, but yet and still, somehow, the Muslim Ummah just doesn't read, or just simply doesn't want to listen. Deen. Then everything else. And even everything else, there's looks, there's wealth, and there's name or stature, But those are all distant seconds to Deen. And if you look at the prophets, the preeminent criteria is Deen. And if you meet a brother who has Deen, he's marriageable. Whether he has wealth, steady job, money in the bank, it's not the criteria to determine whether or not this brother is marriageable. And brothers, as you're moving forward in your life, don't judge yourself as being marriageable or not marriageable based upon how much money you've got, how good your job is. It's your Deen. You look inside and you look at the life that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to live and how he wants you to develop as a human being and as a man. And if you are into your Deen and you're praying 5 times a day, when I say praying 5 times a day, it's not like stand up, go down, stand up, go. I'm talking about deep in your prayers, and your Deen is the center of your life. Then you're able to lead. You're able to lead a sister, and you're able to lead a family. Go and get married and find a sister who understands the value of your Deen. And if you find a sister who says, well, listen, you've got strong Deen, mashallah, but you're only working as a carpenter and you don't make enough money to provide for me, and so I'm sorry, brother, but it's not going to work out. Leave her alone. Leave her alone, because this is not a sister who's on her Deen. Or if her parents put that barrier in front of you, take a step back and find a sister who prioritizes your value the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us to prioritize value. You're not missing anything. You're not losing anything. Our God is very, very clear about how we get married and why we get married and what the criteria is. And wealth is down the ladder. And so that is what I wanted to talk to you about. And if anybody has any comments or questions or opinions, or if you think that maybe I'm just wrong, don't make any sense, let me know. But another issue of Deen Diaries is coming up, so look for it later this week. And if you haven't seen the episodes to date, please take a look and please share this content with your other single friends, inshaAllah. We need to get married. As an ummah, we need to get married. And we need to do it for the right reasons, because if you get married for the right reasons, then you cultivate your children in the right environment. And this is what makes the ummah strong. The blessings will come, the barakah will come when our hearts are in the right place, when our spirits are in the right place, when we are lockstep with the criteria that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set for us. Then we will become strong. You look at, so many wealthy Muslims out there, the Middle East, the oil countries. And then look at our Prophet. That's the example. Our Prophet is the example. Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my brothers and sisters. Until next time.